Welcome to Franchise Killer, a podcast where we pick movie franchises or wannabe franchises, review them film by film, and see where things went wrong or right.
All right, soldier.
That was terrible.
You told me not to do it. I did it anyways.
Was that a Bill Paxton
That was an
impersonation?
attempt. That was a Kentucky accent.
It was awful. But I appreciate your commitment.
I went for it.
I'm Reese. Across from me we have
David.
to his left.
Irina.
And stuck in a time loop where the only way to stop it is to watch The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, we have...
AJ.
And joining us today, we have Alex and Sharon Shaw from School of Movies. How are y'all doing?
Welcome.
We're good, thank you.
It is great to have you. The movie we're talking about today is Edge of Tomorrow, a movie that came out in 2014, directed by Doug Liman. And this is kind of hilarious. This movie has some of the most ridiculous titles leading up to its ultimate title.
Oh, really?
It started off in the script phase. It started off as We Mortals Are.
What?
Interesting.
Yeah, for whatever so it's based off a light novel called All You Need Is Kill, but the script was called We Mortals Are, which is maybe the worst title I've heard for a movie. But then it turned into All You Need Is Kill, stuck in the pre-production phase at that title for a little while. And then it turned into Edge of Tomorrow, which is the theatrical title. And then for the video release, it turned into Live, Die, Repeat. And it's so funny because I bought the Blu-ray, and I don't know if it's the same as y'all over there, but on the front cover, it says Live, Die, Repeat, big, bold letters, and then down at the bottom, very small, Edge of Tomorrow. And apparently the official title is still Edge of Tomorrow, but if you were to look at this on the movie shelf, you would not get that. It would be like, oh, yeah, let's watch Live, Die, Repeat. On the spine of the Blu-ray cover, it also says Live, Die, Repeat, and then / Edge of Tomorrow. It is the ultimate, we're uncertain about
like
this
how we want to name this.
It's the next James Bond movie.
Pick a title, guys.
A lot of, yeah, the streaming services also do the Live, Die, Repeat, Edge of Tomorrow.
Yeah, I saw that too.
And I think some of that is appeasing Doug Liman because he really wanted the Live, Die, Repeat to be the title. And WB didn't want that. So.
Of all of them, Live, Die, Repeat at least tells you what to expect.
Right.
Edge of Tomorrow means nothing. Neither does All You Need Is Kill. Neither does, what was it? Mortals Are We?
Mortals, we mortals are.
Yeah.
We mortals are.
But Live, Die, Repeat also works really well as a tagline, so I can kind of understand doing Edge of Tomorrow and then Live, Die, Repeat.
Because people will be like, oh, okay, so I get what the film's about because of the tagline.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think
Just get rid of the actual title and call it the tagline.
Indeed. But
exactly,
The days of WB making good decisions ended long ago.
Let's go and see This Ain't No Game tonight, honey.
Live, Die, Repeat is a much better sales pitch for a movie. In hindsight, I kind of like Edge of Tomorrow in a weird way.
I mean, it's all right.
It's
Well,
like,
it's-
what is
poetic.
that?
It's one of those titles where you have to not pick it apart. You just
Yeah.
have to say it and say, "Oh yeah, that's catchy."
Yeah, it
Don't
means-
think too hard about
Yeah,
it.
it means nothing.
It's because he almost makes it tomorrow, but not quite.
Well, no, it's just like you're pushing it. You're
He's
pushing it to the
he's
edge.
skirting the edge of tomorrow.
Yeah,
throughout the
there you
film.
go.
Yeah. So
And then once he gets out of prison, though, it really kind of is like everything's on the edge and everyone's just shooting each other.
Wait, prison?
AJ,
Yeah.
What did you see?
there's no prison in this movie.
There's like superpowered humans just shooting each other and all this violence everywhere. And I think someone goes to the moon eventually.
No, nobody
Hancock.
goes to the moon in this movie, buddy.
Hancock. We watched Hancock.
Oh, no, we did not.
No, we didn't. But
AJ.
hey, that's okay. He watched Edge of Tomorrow for every other episode
Yeah, he's
before
prepped-
this,
he's prepped
so
for this
he's
one.
good.
Alex and Sharon, for the past 119 episodes, AJ has mistakenly watched the wrong movie for an episode, and then weirdly had great insight into the movie we're actually talking about for the following the episodes.
It's all connected.
It's all connected.
At least you didn't have to shoot yourself at the end of every time you watched Edge of Tomorrow.
Well, little did we know.
We did a show on Hancock, and have you heard about the original? I mean, have you done Hancock yet?
No.
Well,
yeah.
funny you say that.
If you when you do Hancock, look at the original script and just check over what it was originally going to be like. Tonight He Comes, it was going to be called.
Tonight He
very
Comes.
little
That
of
is
that
the
original.
worst.
Oh my
So it went from a bad name to a slightly less bad name.
No, it's
They're actually specifically referring to a man orgasming as well. Like that
lovely.
bit was retained for the Blu-ray release. If you watch the unedited version, Will Smith fires holes in the top of his trailer with his seed.
Oh no.
Oh my
no.
gosh.
have y'all seen The
But
Boys?
that's like a fun version of what this. Like Sharon did a reading from the actual script. It's grim and miserable. It makes Watchmen seem like the Care Bears.
That's funny.
Oh
You bring
my
up the Watchmen.
So, would you say The Boys is pretty accurate to that original script? Have y'all seen that show?
I read the first few episodes. Sorry, I read the first few comics ages ago, and I haven't actually watched the show. As far as I can tell, the show seems to be going a little bit more in depth, and a lot of people like it.
Yeah, it's very I don't know, unafraid of being offensive. I'll just say that. Yeah, but Edge of Tomorrow, directed by Doug Liman. He also directed the movies Swingers, Go, The Bourne Identity, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Jumper, American Made, and the upcoming Roadhouse remake. This guy is all over the place. Like, there's so few directors where I'm like, I cannot tell what your style is. Doug Liman being one of them. I think the only thing I can, track throughout his movies that is similar is there's a frenetic pacing to the movies.
Yeah.
Like, that's the only thing. Otherwise, I think Edge of Tomorrow, while being a gritty action, frenetic movie, is nothing like The Bourne Identity or
Jumper.
Go or Jumper. It is sci-fi in the sense that, Jumper,
Yeah.
I think Jumper's kind of slightly underrated, by the way. That movie got slaughtered when it first came out. And
Also eligible for an episode here.
Yeah,
it is. That's
Also,
true.
potentially, maybe was on my list. We'll see.
Yeah. But Doug Liman, I kind of equate him to a Ron Howard, where it's like he's going to direct the movie and he's going to direct it well. There's no guarantee you'll like the movie or it's really good, but
he's at least competent what he does, right?
He seems competent. I mean, I was going to ask what was his most popular? What was his most
Bourne Identity?
Okay.
Is
Oh,
probably,
yeah, Bourne Identity, definitely.
Yeah, definitely his most popular.
Like,
I do
if-
love
if
Go.
you
Did we say Mr. and Mrs. Smith? That was pretty
Yes.
huge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mr. and Mrs. Smith was huge.
Oh, I remember that one.
Yeah.
If he
yeah,
has
Bourne,
a hallmark, it's a kick-ass track over the end credits. If it gets to
Yeah.
the end of the movie and they play a really pumping song over the end credits, I'm like, oh, was that Doug Liman?
Yeah, there you
A
go.
really good patter. Like, his style's not a million miles off of John Favreau, who was in Swingers.
Yes.
His Iron Man style. It's there's a little bit of intersection between those two. They work with good scripts well.
Yeah. I will say, having watched special features of this, he seems like a by the seat of his pants type of director, where it's just whatever happens today, whatever, let's just try a whole
Right.
bunch of things.
He's got good vision.
Yeah, but
I don't think the full script was finished while they were still filming.
Nope. Didn't have an ending.
he seems like the director that just kind of wandered into the set each morning and be like, oh, I'm directing the movie? Okay, let's do this.
I imagine he looks over at Tom Cruise and is like, "Are you good to do just something today?" And Tom Cruise
Is
being
always
Tom
like,
Cruise.
yeah, I'm ready.
Yeah.
Good thing he gets to shoot the same scene over and over and over.
There you go. Yep. Yeah, that's another question. How much of this movie is actually repeated,
I think of a little bit.
A little bit. The movie stars Tom Cruise, Emily Blunt, Bill Paxton, and Brendan Gleeson, and it's written by Christopher McQuarrie, a person who would go on to work with Tom Cruise on many films, Mission Impossible, Jack Reacher, all that stuff. Like Christopher McQuarrie,
Collateral.
Collateral. He's the Mission Impossible guy. He's handled every Mission Impossible movie past. I think it's Rogue Nation. All the subtitles to these movies
your
are
favorite,
crazy.
yeah.
But Ghost Protocol was the Incredibles director, and then we had
that
Rogue.
Bird?
Yeah, McQuarrie did Rogue Nation and onward to the upcoming Dead Reckoning Part 1. What a title, by
Wow,
the way!
Part
Mission,
1.
Yeah.
Mission: Impossible: Dead Reckoning: Part 1 or dash Part
You
1.
get a proctologist in
Live,
there.
die, repeat.
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
I misspoke. McQuarrie did not do Collateral. The cinematographer did Collateral that also works with Tom Cruise quite a bit.
Oh, okay. I didn't.
Oh yeah, no.
that.
Michael Mann did Collateral. I was
Right,
like, hang on, did he do Collateral Damage, the Schwarzenegger one? But yeah, but no, that honestly, that even if this film didn't do fantastically well, and I'm assuming it didn't because it's on this show. If that put Tom Cruise in touch with Chris McQuarrie, that's like a lifetime business relationship.
Right.
That it starts.
Yeah.
I don't know whether they were already doing Jack Reacher, but I'll just double check that. Yeah.
I think Jack Reacher might have been slightly before this one, so that might have been the beginning of that relationship there. But yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. But yeah, the movie is written by Christopher McQuarrie, also Jez Butterworth and John Henry Butterworth.
What a
name.
they're
the Butterworth brothers. They
tend to credit. Hang on a second, sorry. What's his name? Bryan Singer with The Usual Suspects. They always go, well, he did one fantastic film, The Usual Suspects, written by Chris McQuarrie. So I'd like to attribute it to him, frankly.
Yeah.
I think so.
Bryan Singer has proved himself to be
for
utterly mediocre in every film he's made since then, including X-Men 2. There, I said it.
Ooh, bold
that is a
statement.
big no.
Can I'm actually going to agree with you there. I like X-Men 2, but everyone kind of regards that movie as like just the best X-Men movie that ever existed, and I frankly do not agree.
You're
with
more
that
of an
statement.
X-Men Apocalypse guy, right?
No,
I do listen.
First Class.
I do listen to the film score a lot. I
Yeah.
loved the X-Men
yeah, the score is
2
really good.
Film score.
I actually like, and it's Bryan Singer again, but I actually like the first X-Men better than the second one. Weirdly, I know it's there's some nostalgia for that
I
movie.
think X-Men 2 tries to go too far, a little too hard and too quickly.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, we did a whole show on it, and that's the one where at the end, Ian McKellen's Magneto basically becomes Hitler times 1,000.
Yeah.
Says,
Yeah.
Charles, if you would please kill every human in the entire world. And it's like, okay, Charles, do you see what Eric just tried to make you do? You got to deal with him now.
Yeah,
And he
yeah,
never
yeah.
does.
I do love that Nightcrawler sequence though.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
that's slick. But have you guys seen the specific horribly edited scene in Bohemian Rhapsody with just Queen sitting down with a manager played by Littlefinger?
Oh my gosh!
And
is
there's
this
like
the part where they?
112 cuts in 62 seconds. It's
Is this the part
absurd.
where
They're just having
they
a cup of tea and a chat.
conceivably? Is that the part where they conceivably come up with the Bohemian Rhapsody song?
I don't remember the actual. I don't think so. I think it was just discussing
it
where
was
Queen would be going next.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the thing I was going to get at was that it's the same guy who does the score. Since Irina, you mentioned that you liked his music.
Yeah,
does the editing. I've never heard of that in a movie, outside of this one guy, John Ottman, who does both the music and editing, and it feels like. It's almost
so
like,
strange.
I remember Alan Silvestri was getting really pissed off with James Cameron because he was just trying to finish off the score for Aliens, and
Right.
Cameron kept re-editing it and saying, "There you
my
go, now
gosh.
do the score again for that scene." I was like, "For God's sake!" So I can see why a composer might be like, "Oh, I'll edit it for you." Hey, make it a little bit easier for themselves.
Does Carpenter do his own editing?
I mean, Carpenter's a jack of he
does everything.
He's the Renaissance man, but yeah. So yeah, John Ottman, I think is a terrible editor and a mediocre composer as well. So I feel like he should just have specialized in one of those. But that's just me and Bryan Singer, and I've loathed Bryan Singer since X-Men 1. So way before we found out what a terrible person he was.
Well, you didn't like Jack the Giant Slayer didn't do anything for you?
Did nothing apart from. I saw that way late. I was like, okay, so is that? I mean, have you done that show yet?
No.
That
But
was a franchise killer and a half.
It has
That
some of
thing
the
cost-
worst modern CGI that I've ever seen.
Don't tell my dad.
That thing cost like 5 times as much as Jurassic Park 1.
Really?
Yeah, not sans inflation, but yeah, exactly. It was such an expensive dumb movie.
Wow. Oh gosh.
But
The Butterworth brothers, though,
Yeah,
they
back to
also
the
did
Butterworth.
Spectre, Ford versus Ferrari, some pretty big names as well.
Yeah.
They collaborate quite a bit.
I like Ford
Whoever
v
said
Ferrari
Jack
Spectre,
Reacher
though.
was before this was absolutely right. That was 2012, so they already had a working relationship, which makes Edge of Tomorrow slightly less key. It was more like Tom said, "Oh, hey, I know a guy."
Yeah, which is cool. Tom Cruise, he forms relationships with a lot of people in showbiz, but Christopher McQuarrie is easily his most long-standing relationship with someone, so they must just connect on a different level, I guess. But yeah, let's move on. So for those that are new to this show, on this podcast, we first go over our thoughts on the film before revisiting it for the episode. Then we dive into the story, break it down bit by bit, and talk about the more significant moments. Then towards the end of the show, we give our brief reviews and numbered scores, along with an analysis on the health of the franchise and whether or not this film hurt it. So let's start with our guests. Alex and Sharon Shaw, had y'all seen Edge of Tomorrow before this episode? And this is before the prep for this episode. And what was your, I guess, first impression of this film when you had first seen it?
Yes, we'd seen it before.
I saw it in the cinema.
Yeah. Did I?
It was 2014, so no.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
So saw it in the cinema. So
And
Alex, you saw it
Blu-ray at
in
home.
Okay. And
I must
Sharon,
have liked it enough to buy it again on Blu-ray so that I could show it
Yeah.
to Sharon then.
Yeah, but not enough to tell me to spend money on going to see it.
Yeah,
in
go
the
see it in the
cinema.
cinema.
Okay, makes sense.
I think my strongest impression of when I first saw it was mentally comparing it to Oblivion
Yeah.
favourably.
Same.
Yep.
Like, I preferred this to Oblivion.
And also Elysium came out around this time. Everyone's forgotten
Yeah.
that. And Matt Damon's also in a mech suit trying to deal. It's to do with socialized medicine. And it was, I think, the last hurrah for, who directed District 9?
Neil Blomkamp.
Neil Blomkamp, that's the guy.
Yeah.
He was going to do RoboCop, but then they canned it.
He was
again.
going to do Halo.
He would have
He was
been
gonna do
perfect
Aliens
for RoboCop.
2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Hopefully he didn't take the Chappie approach to RoboCop, maybe.
Yeah, no, Chappie excited the hell out of me. I was like, wow, it's going to be like Short Circuit, but like really, really good and modern and not as racist. And then it ends up being horrible. So
It's so funny. We compare Neil Blomkamp and Duncan Jones as filmmakers because they've had such exciting starts to their careers. Neil Blomkamp,
Moon.
District 9, and then Elysium, to a lesser extent, it's not great, but it's still like, oh, there's ambition there.
Yeah, there's promise.
Yeah.
Competent.
Yeah, Duncan Jones with Moon and then Source Code. So I was like, oh, we've got these burgeoning sci-fi directors that are really exciting. And then they just both of them just fall off a cliff. Like him with Chappie and Duncan Jones with Warcraft and Mute, which is terrible.
That was a bad movie, man.
a lot of people liked Chronicle as well, so I'd put Josh Trank in there as well. Although
yeah.
he had some personal issues as well.
Yeah, Chronicle and the Fant 4-stick.
What?
Fox screwed him on that. I feel like it's really difficult to pin it on any one particular person.
Right,
That was a complete botch job of a production.
I think there's a better cut of that movie that exists somewhere that said it's still not the Fantastic Four that I want. But
Are you saying hashtag release the Trank cut?
I'm not saying that. No more hashtags.
Maybe it'll surface when Marvel do their Fantastic Four. Number 4, fourth time's the charm.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I thought of one more thing about Macquarie and Cruz that's actually quite significant to cinema in general. They did a PSA that effectively said, when you get your TV, it will be set to dynamic mode, which is good for sports. Please turn it off dynamic mode. We need to get you, and if you know anything about films, go to your parents' houses and switch that off dynamic mode for whatever channel they watch movies on.
Don't tell them.
Don't tell them, because they won't be able to tell the
they'll
difference.
try and turn it back.
But it's the difference between motion smoothing, which ruins movies and makes everything look weirdly, way too realistic, and everyone moves in a horrible
It's
way.
the Hobbit unexpected
Soap opera.
journey effect.
Yep.
Bingo, yeah. Which apparently isn't Avatar getting shot in that, the new Avatar,
I have
There-
no idea.
or some updated version.
I think he's James Cameron's alluded to something with frame rate, but I don't think anything has been confirmed at this
So it's
moment.
like he's following Napoleon to try and invade Russia. I've got a better idea. Oh, it's the same idea. It's the same idea. It's a bit cold.
Yeah. All right, David, how about you? Had you seen Edge of Tomorrow before this episode?
I had not seen it, and I guess you'll see what I think.
Yep. Irina?
I hadn't, and I hadn't also seen Oblivion either. It felt like there were just a bunch of movies during this time that were all too similar, and so I never felt the need to go see them for some reason.
Yeah, they all kind of blended
Yeah,
together.
so I sat out for this one and watched it for the first time.
I will say I saw
Yeah.
Oblivion though. I know we're not talking Oblivion, but they do seem very similar in that same camp.
He,
and maybe
he
I
shot
chose
these movies back to back.
That would be
Like
why.
he finished or Tom Cruise, that is, finished Oblivion. A week later, he was on the set for Edge of Tomorrow.
And the music also on Oblivion was really good. What was that, M83 that did?
Yeah, M83.
And that was really good. So.
Yep.
Yeah, best part of the movie.
Yep. AJ, how about you? Had you seen Edge of Tomorrow before this episode?
I had. It was definitely after it came out on home media. I think I watched it with my dad, but didn't really revisit it since then, maybe once. So it's been quite a while until now.
I hadn't thought about it, but this is kind of a good, like, dad movie. You know? It's good. All right. With that said...
What about you, Reese?
Oh, yeah. I had seen this. I saw it in theaters. Really liked it at the time. Who knows if that opinion has changed. But at that point, we hadn't had too many, like, movies that played around with time loops. They existed.
I don't know, man. We've had quite a few.
No, at the time.
We've had since then.
Yeah, we had Groundhog Day, which is the one that all critics compared it to. And ever since, we've had... I'm going to make an argument for this movie's influence, even though it has not... it didn't do exceptionally at the box office. But there have been so many time loop movies since Edge of Tomorrow.
Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think this movie kind of snuck its way into being weirdly influential in a lot of ways. But yeah, I saw it in theaters in 2014. Liked it. So that's my history.
All right.
And I do have that Blu-ray that says Live, Die, Repeat. So with that said, David, you want to give us a quick call to action? Actually, first, I'm going to have Alex and Sharon, y'all want to plug your podcast for us and kind of tell us what's going on?
I wrote something down because I hate being put on the spot on these kind of things.
Sorry.
We run the School of Movies, which is a show where we like to dig deep, especially into popcorn films rather than art house films. We try to find as much meaning and detail as we can in films that people would dismiss as just big dumb fun. And it's especially if we connect with the movie emotionally. And we slalom back and forth between being very silly and also making everyone cry. So if you can lean into that tonal whiplash and you're fine with anti-capitalist ranting, then come check out our show. Probably best to start with the ones that Franchise Killer guested on. So that would be David, Irene, and Reese, who were on Super Mario Brothers in early 2022, The Shadow in mid-2022, and Con Air in early 2022.
Did you say Shazam?
Shazam as well,
shit.
Yeah.
And Shazam. I was racking my brains and I was like,
you can swap Shazam and Con Air if you want.
Shazam.
Also you have School of Everything Else as well, which I enjoy, especially for the TV kind of stuff. I really enjoyed now it's blanking on me, Oscar Isaac, Disney.
Moon Knight.
I really enjoyed that episode. It was very good.
Yeah, and y'all's Blade Runner 2049, awesome. Like
I'm also gonna just plug this how we even came to meet, which is before we started this podcast. I think Reese was talking to me about starting this podcast and was like, David, start looking into movie podcasts, start researching, understanding how people do podcasts, and I stumbled across School of Movies. I believe it was Marvel, Captain Marvel, their other episode with that, and I was like, dang, this is really good.
You know, the funny thing is I was familiar with School of Movies before you even did that.
Oh, really?
I was looking for anyone and everyone who was interested in Lord of the Rings, and I was like, I want like a deep dive on Lord of the Rings.
Nope, and nobody out there.
And we went deep.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think each of those 3 episodes is 5 hours long or thereabouts.
We
had to release them back in the day in 2 parts each.
Yeah, I ate up every bit of that.
And you might think that's ridiculous, but if you do a deep dive on Lord of the Rings, it's easy to make it.
You could watch more in the appendices than you do the actual movies.
That's honestly we'll know our podcast is done when we finally have to cover Lord of the Rings. Like that's our
I would think if you go for Franchise Killer, you'd go with The Hobbit first.
Yeah,
we're going to cover all of them if we do one.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe we'll be able to scapegoat Jeff Bezos on that Amazon show.
We'll see how people take it. Yeah.
All right, David, give us that quick call to action and keep it quick.
With all the different things we're doing today, I should have spent some time working on this. You think that would have been a good idea?
You never do.
I never do.
David.
Reese, you told me to come back and find you. You told me to come here and plug this podcast. You told me 3 days ago, and I've done this at least 12 times. And I still don't think you've given me the right direction for this. You said something about telling people to go to Apple Podcasts and give a 5-star review because something with the algorithm pumps us up in front of other people. Otherwise, we're just going to keep living this day over and over again, and people can go to our Instagram, our Twitter, our YouTube, where we also have a lot of our episodes. But you can listen to us anywhere. You could tell your family, you could tell your friends, and you can talk to Alexa. She knows us as well.
Thanks, Alexa. We'll just move on from that. Thank you.
I thought that was good.
That was good.
No, it was
Round of
good.
On the
applause.
spot?
It was good.
Round
It
of
was good.
applause.
For improv, not bad. I'll give it to you.
I'm working on it.
All right. With that said, Irina, you've got our plot here. We're going to be
Yeah.
doing this in the 3-act structure, something we've been doing
Implementing.
lately. We'll just get the whole story out of the way.
Yep.
Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and then free for all.
Yeah.
So you want to take it away with that story?
What I am about to tell you sounds crazy. But you have to listen to me. Your very lives depend on it.
This is not the end.
You see, this isn't the first time. Now, we've had this conversation. What day is it?
Judgment Day. You just came in with the fresh recruits.
This is not the end.
The invasion will fail, along with every soldier you are sending. We lose
This is not
everything.
the end.
Come find me when you wake up.
So with our part 1, setting is Europe. It's overtaken by mimics, which started in, they arrived in Germany first. What a coincidence. Major Cage meets up with General Brigham and is, after that encounter, sent to the coast of France for battle. Cage dies after encountering a blue mimic and gets its blood all over him. Cage begins to repeat the same day over and over again each time he dies. On one occasion, he saves Rita Vrataski, a war hero, who realizes what's happening to him and tells him to go find her when he wakes up. They both then die. Part 2, we've got Cage, and he awakens again and seeks out Rita Vrataski, who fills him in on what's happening to him and explains the way these mimics operate. So does anyone want to interject how these mimics work here?
I will have a slight anecdote. So I did read I didn't read, but I listened to most of the audiobook, the All You Need Is Kill. And in All You Need Is Kill, they are described as weird toad-like monsters.
Toad.
Yeah, like toad-shaped.
Yeah, four-armed bloated toads.
Yeah, and I will just say that the decision to change them was smart.
Yeah. I would agree with that. But in terms of how they interconnect and their social behavior,
Right.
I guess kind of hive mind. The book describes them as antenna
Yeah.
and servers and masters,
Right.
or masters and slaves kind of thing. So you have decentralized communication across the grunts or the pawns, and then you have a middleman who relays all the information back to what here they're calling the Omega in the film.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they take all that information, the Omega retains it, resets the day so that they can win the battle or, what have you, manipulate the future the next time.
Yeah.
All right. Perfect.
My problem with these creatures, by the way, sorry, you.
Oh, no,
opened
that's
this up.
fine.
What does family dinner look like with these characters, these creatures?
They don't have one.
My problem is they almost look too, I don't know, there's too much going on, too much energy, too much, I don't know, too much design. Turn the design down
A notch.
slightly.
Well, I think, with a little bit of context back from the source, they were sent as kind of a forward or advanced guard
Right.
to terraform the planet, and their process of terraforming the planet, consuming the earth, and, their excretions and waste is what's toxic and killing humanity. So humanity decides to attack and defend.
Right.
So they're not necessarily a typical predator where it's, stalking or, hunting down humanity to exterminate them. It's just kind of destructive. They describe it as sweeping out units all at once instead of targeting specific individuals.
I feel like there's some design and concept elements that come from the kaiju in Pacific Rim. That underpinning of blue, the fact that they've got this terraforming thing going on, the long snaky tendrils. I can't think what they're called, but there is something in the X-Men comics back in the distant days that these really remind me of.
Phalanx.
Yeah, that would make sense. And I think, honestly, if I could point at one thing that they probably could have done a bit better for me, these creatures are very ill-defined, and they miss several opportunities to explore more about how this hive mind works and what these creatures are actually doing.
Yeah, I agree. It's very like video game. Like there's there's like the surface level one, then there's a slightly more powerful one, and then there's the big one, the big boss.
Yeah. But don't ask questions. They're here for you to shoot them.
Exactly.
Honestly, the video game aspect, though, is really big in this movie because that's where a lot of the inspiration came from.
Yeah, you've got respawning as well.
Yeah.
Well, I learned that and AJ, you may know this more, but the person who created the comic book that this is based off of he got the idea from playing video games, and he kept respawning from the same point and was like, this is frustrating. I have to keep coming up with new strategies to kill this thing until eventually he did. And he's like, that would make a good comic book.
I thought it was funny because I didn't know that until like I was watching the movie, and David made the comment later while he was researching. And while I was watching the movie, I made the note, this feels like one of those old video games where the saving points were really far apart. So when you would die, you had to start all over.
That's the worst feeling.
And just slight clarification, it wasn't a comic, it was actually a novella or a light novel. In Japan has a lot of illustrations, and they did make a manga after that.
Right.
Yeah.
And the author is Hiroshi Sakurazaka.
Yeah.
Probably butchered that name, but he did. There is quite a bit of departure from that story in this, so I would say inspiration is an appropriate word.
Yeah,
awesome.
Inspiration. All right. So, part 2. Cage makes contact with Rita Vrataski, and she fills him in basically on what is happening. We kind of explained the way the aliens work. Through a series of loops, Vrataski trains Cage, shooting him each time he gets seriously injured because they can't risk him being put in the hospital and getting a transfusion, because otherwise he'll lose the ability to loop the days. Eventually, he sees visions of the Omega and where it's located in the dam in Germany. They don't know where exactly, so they're going to try and figure that out. Cage attempts to infiltrate the dam alone, since Rita, each time they try an attempt, dies every time. But he finds no Omega. Instead, there's an Alpha there that knows what's happening with him and tries to basically rid him of this ability. He then drowns himself on purpose so that he can start the day again. Part 3. Vrataski and Cage sneak into the Ministry of Defense and convince the general to give them a prototype device to find the Omega. During a car chase between our protagonists and the police, Cage discovers the Omega is at the Louvre in Paris. Their car crashes, and Cage wakes up to find he has lost the power because of a blood transfusion. Vrataski saves Cage, and they recruit some soldiers to fly out to Paris. All the soldiers die, but Rita and Cage reach the Louvre. Rita distracts the Alpha, guarding the Omega, and dies. Cage reaches the Omega and is mortally wounded, but he manages to drop a grenade belt into the Omega, destroying it. Cage is again doused with Omega blood and dies. He then awakens on the day he meets General Brigham, his military status still intact.
I want to first talk about the opening here. So we're introduced to Tom Cruise's character, Cage, Major Cage.
Major Cage.
By the way, that is a first sign of the kind of whitewashing we have going on in this movie. The character in the original source material is a Japanese man who is, he is not a major, but he has just been, fighting this war. His name is Kiji. And okay. I guess you can kind of see the connection there.
Yeah.
So yeah, this.
Well, even in the story, the other enlisted men and troops around them, they just called him Cage.
Yeah,
because of the pronunciation.
Yeah, and his final name too, like Killer Cage, kind of.
Right.
That's what he ends up going by. But whitewashing aside, we are introduced to Major Cage. He's a person who's never seen battle, and he's meeting up with Brendan Gleeson's character, who is what is his title again? I don't remember what his title is.
He's a general.
Yeah, he's general.
And Cage himself in the movie, he's not even an infantryman or a fighting soldier. He's specifically a media officer. He's never seen combat, never was intended to see combat. And I think it's really interesting. There's definitely a departure where, and they even talk about this in the movie later on, where Cage here did not choose to fight, to, defend or, whatever cause. He was thrust into the situation because of his own choices to try to blackmail the general. Whereas in the book, Cage, he went there because he wanted to fight. He chose to be there.
It's an interesting choice. I think to both positive and negative effect. I think I don't think the book's that good, if I'm being perfectly honest. I don't think we get to know this character enough. I think rooting this movie in just this kind of cowardly version of Tom Cruise that we don't normally get to see is a smart choice, because that's something we don't see. Like, we don't ever get to see Tom Cruise be not good at something.
Yeah.
And I guess I want to get y'all's impression, and we can start with Alex and Sharon. Sorry. What are y'all's thoughts on, I don't know, this choice, having Tom Cruise play a lesser version of himself for once?
A fish out of water.
Do you know who was originally going to be cast in the role?
Brad Pitt, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It says on Wikipedia that, and I very carefully stayed away from what it earned and what it didn't earn, just so that I wouldn't know for the finale.
Right.
That Brad Pitt was asked and declined, and then they went after Tom Cruise, and then they changed the script to accommodate for the different age. Brad Pitt is 58 years old. Tom Cruise is 60 years old.
Yeah.
How much accommodation was needed at that
Honestly, that's not much of a difference.
Are they that old?
Think
yeah.
That was...
Make him a major. I don't know.
With Tom Cruise, and this goes back to the screenwriter, I think they can write understanding that their star will perform his own stunts.
Right.
And I was reading, this is tangential, but I was reading kind of a write-up on the state of the visual effects industry and, the working conditions there. And a lot of movie makers write their movies and film their movies with the intent and attitude of, we'll just fix it in post. So special effects is magic. They'll just make anything we want, which is, still, like, we've got a lot of great technology, but we still need man hours and people to do that. So they don't always have that expectation here, where here they actually did have a special effects supervisor on the crew. And I have his name somewhere.
What's the actual question regarding Tom Cruise? I need it in very definite words.
Like, are we happy that Tom Cruise is finally not just, look at this badass, he can do anything? Are we happy
You
that
mean
he's finally...
for one?
He's a coward.
Because then after that, he's a badass who can do anything.
Exactly. But
Right.
I normally, and there's kind of a litmus test. I'm straying from the question, but I think for Tom Cruise, the litmus test is, do you like Tom Cruise or not? And if you do, you're going to like this movie. If you don't, you won't. Like, it's
weird. That's usually how it works with actors.
And I think this movie is the first one, or one of the few, that's like, hey, we know y'all don't like Tom Cruise always doing the same exact thing, always, even though he will be doing it eventually. So let's muddy him up, make him morally gray for once, instead of just,
chaotic good.
Captain America. So I'm trying to see how people feel about that choice.
I'm just going to interject and say I remember this moment in the movie where we kind of learn he's the media guy.
I hope you do.
We talked about this, Arena. It was less almost about his character. I mean, because I'm turned off by the whole, he doesn't want to actually do hard work. It seems like that's kind of what I'm getting out of it. But I have a visceral reaction to the military complex when it comes to General Brigham and the way they kind of handle just like, you're going to do as I say, and you have no choice in the matter, and we can be dicks about it. We will yell at you, and you're just going to go die out in the field. And I hate that. I had to pause the movie. I refilled my coffee. I was ranting about it. I don't like what Tom Cruise's character was doing, but I was conflicted about everything in this opening sequence.
Yeah, it's my biggest hang up where I'm like, is that actually something that can happen?
Why not?
Like a general who
they can do whatever they want.
Yeah, a general can just tell a major like, hey, you're fighting on the
not
front
across
line.
services. A U.S. serviceman will not be completely and independently transferred to another commanding officer.
Well, didn't they equally say that they did go back and talk to his commanding officer and they made the thing happen between them?
Yeah, but you can't transfer 100% control of another person to a different branch, because when someone signs up for the military, with whether it's media or what have you, if it's going to see combat or not, they're swearing an oath to your country. And so going to work for, this other country's commanding officer it's just
they're aliens,
the only
man.
thing I can argue is that this whole situation is unprecedented. So usual rules don't apply, kind of a thing. So it's it's a little ridiculous. But I think my impression of Tom Cruise in this is I go back and forth because I'm too familiar with him and his work. So when I see him in a movie, I immediately feel at ease. So the beginning of this film wants to put you kind of in the thick of it, where it's more of a war movie than an alien invasion.
Yeah.
Alien invasion just happens to be the scenario, but it's more of a war movie. So when I see Tom Cruise put in the center of it, I'm not worried. There are moments where you do feel that battle trauma happening, but at the same time, it's Tom Cruise. Like he's impenetrable in some way. So I did like putting him in the cowardly position, because at least that gives me something to chew on with his character, rather than him just being a war hero that, is just going to survive no matter what, which, long story short, he does. It's at least more interesting to me.
Yeah.
It is. I'm going to draft off what your sentiment is there. And Tom Cruise, he's supposed to be this fish out of water. He's trying to get out of seeing action because he just doesn't have the ability. And the cowardice aspect kind of, in my mind, is more just kind of, what's the word? A manipulator. He's good at media and, presenting himself and twisting stories and stuff.
Right.
But I never really got the impression that he was incapable. And I think that was just because it was Tom Cruise. I didn't see him truly stumble or, just like he had trouble operating the mech suit and the weapons and turning the safety off, but just as much as anybody else would that is new to it, not necessarily someone who's really an underdog in that regard or, coming from behind or just not physically fit enough. So there was, I guess, less of a hurdle to go from that point to where he ended up in the end of the movie.
Right.
Yeah. Alex and Sharon, I'm just curious, like, what is y'all's opinions on Tom Cruise, leading man, going into this movie?
I think what struck me about the way he is, certainly for the first third or so, is that it was much more reminiscent of his earlier work. I'm thinking A Few Good Men, Jerry Maguire sort of era.
Where he was willing to kind of just like not look good, not be a protagonist or completely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like the leaning in, I mean, particularly the fact that he is supposed to be this, he's an advertiser. We're salespeople. We sell. That is his character in Jerry Maguire. And obviously there's a big element of him emotionally working through that in that movie.
It helps that at the very beginning he realizes he hates himself. So that's the theme of the movie.
Indeed. Yeah. Whereas in this, I think he does sort of bring that personality type up to the level of, okay, well, what would have happened if that had never hit Jerry and then war were declared?
Yeah.
But he doesn't initially have that Tom Cruise dangling off buildings in Mission Impossible vibe to him. And honestly, I don't feel like he ever quite gets to that level. I never really felt like there was a sense of he is now so well trained and hard that absolutely nothing can get through him.
Right.
There was always that element for me of something could trip him up, because the whole plot being built around he dies and dies and dies and dies and dies, it just sort of always, for me, gave him that level of slight vulnerability, because for the plot to progress the way it has been doing, he has to die.
Yeah.
And I think this movie's mission statement is pretty clear right from the start when we see... It's something you never see in a Tom Cruise movie. Tom Cruise dying in a brutal fashion.
Yeah.
Like
sometimes
the first,
comical, too.
Yeah, the first time he encounters one of these mimics, and the blood, or whatever it is, the fluid, like lands on his face, and you see his face just completely melt. I'm like, that is... Okay, cool. Like, I'm
most brutal Tom Cruise death for sure.
You won't see that in a Mission Impossible movie. You won't see that in Jack Reacher. Like, he's the tough guy. I like seeing this. Oh, you're gonna show Tom Cruise die for once. He's not afraid to. I always thought Tom Cruise had kind of assumed that role of like the Vin Diesel or The Rock, where they have it written in their contracts, where it's like, I can never be seen lying face flat on the ground, because that's
must be
bad for my
happy.
image.
Must be happy.
I can only be punched 35 times in this movie. Like there's a scene in, I think it's Fast 5 or Fast and Furious 6.
He and The Rock had to have their punches counted so it came out as exactly even.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. and
masculine.
There's a scene where The
He's
Rock...
got a sausage roll. I want a sausage roll.
But there's a scene where I think The Rock gets knocked... Yeah, The Rock gets knocked down by Vin Diesel, and in his contract, he can't be lying face down, so he's just sat on his butt, just like on the ground, and it looks infinitely more ridiculous than just being knocked down. Like, you're sitting on your butt, just like there in this action space, and like, because for whatever reason you couldn't be lying down. I don't know.
It's part of his brand.
Dwayne may rock bottom you may not rock bottom Dwayne.
I watched some, I don't know why, but today something came up with The Rock where I was watching him. Oh, he posted on his Instagram or something about...
Opposite Emily Blunt in Jungle Cruise.
No, it was him and Brock Lesnar back in like 2000 when Brock Lesnar was taking over. And
the ultimate
I don't watch wrestling, but it was interesting because they brought up that exact comments like, oh, nobody does the rock bottom except for The Rock, and then Brock Lesnar does it to him. Anyway.
My God! Brock Lesnar just did the rock bottom!
Yeah.
Tom Cruise does go down. He doesn't die, but he does go down in a very disgusting way in Interview with the Vampire.
Yes,
that's
he
true.
Does.
We kind of love that movie, actually.
Oh yeah,
little girl.
I'm not even going to tiptoe around it. I love that movie.
Oh, us too. Yeah, we did a really good show on that. We've, I think we did that like almost exactly around the same time that Anne Rice died.
Really?
Wow! So
it was
fairly
tinged
recently.
with extra sadness.
Yeah.
I've got some things to say about Tom Cruise and specifically the opening.
Yeah.
That I've been waiting very patiently to say.
Go ahead.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Okay, it's important to. I think I banked when Irina, you said you didn't want to. It was unusual to see him not like Captain America, and it got me thinking about why do we think of Tom like this, and how much influence being in Mission Impossible after Mission Impossible has had on his career, because that's been most of the 21st century. Has been lots of Mission Impossible, and he's done other things most definitely, but it's Ethan Hunt as a character has got no edge to him. He's got nothing going on. He's just Tom Cruise, super dedicated all the time. And like, there's no character development. It's fine. We're kind of just watching Jackie Chan do live action stunts in real time with one of the not only greatest superstars who ever lived of the silver screen, but someone who can command Top Gun 2 audiences. Something I've been saying for a long while is it's not just superstars and it's not just films. People don't want to go and see Robert Downey Jr. play Dr. Dolittle, but they will absolutely come in droves, like $1 billion guaranteed if he comes back for Iron Man 4, for example. Somehow they can twist their Marvel magic. But there is a major difference there is a major difference between Tom Cruise being really, really good at what he does, which is what he is in Mission Impossible, and Tom Cruise being an arsehole, which he, in a surprising amount of movies, he's not very nice at all.
Yeah.
And I wrote them down while we were chatting. The Mummy, that recent rotten
That's
reboot.
right.
We covered
the
it.
Dark Universe.
That's
He's
right.
a scumbag in that. American Made. Did someone mention that, the Doug Liman film where he's like
I didn't.
drug
I mentioned
trafficker?
it, but yeah, I didn't talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Lions for Lambs, he's like this slimy senator who wants to send boys to war or something like that. Interview with the Vampire, we've already mentioned. He's this, we're all here to see him because he's incredibly charismatic, but he is a bad person.
He is
as
bad.
Lestat.
Very bad.
Eyes Wide Shut, he's a scumbag in that. Like, he's also an idiot in that. I have real problems watching that movie, but we covered it in our Kubrick season. War of the Worlds, he's a bad deadbeat dad.
That's
and
true.
Like, his whole journey is learning to actually give a shit about his kids. Sorry, can we say the S word?
Oh,
No,
you're
yeah,
welcome.
good.
All it took was
Okay.
aliens.
Risky Business. Stick aliens in there and suddenly his personality will improve. Risky Business, one of his earliest ones. He's horrible in that. He basically starts running Rebecca De Mornay on that. He's kind of a pimp in that movie.
Yep.
Rain Man, he is loathsome throughout that film until the
Yep.
end when he starts to care about someone other than himself. Cocktail, we saw just recently. We don't know anything about him, but all he wants to do is start a drinks business, and he doesn't want to pay taxes. Like he's awful in that film.
Tropic Thunder,
Vanilla
he's
Sky.
also bad.
I was waiting to bring that up.
He is so selfish, and the whole point of that film is that he's so selfish. It's an entire world to serve him.
Yep.
Then there's his chameleonic turn in Tropic Thunder, where he's parodying
Les Grossman.
vampiric
Yeah.
producers of Hollywood. I recommend watching Tropic Thunder, though. You will the Robert Downey Jr. blackface thing that was so shocking and funny in the Bush administration. That's funny now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rock of Ages, I haven't seen that one, but I think he's a scumbag rock star. And then there's Magnolia, where he's basically the worst man on YouTube.
Yeah.
But just
the worst self-help
broadcasting
dude.
his horrible men's rights activism and how to, pretend like you're nice and sweet so that you can score ladies. He's horrendous in all of these films.
Even, I thought about it, even Top Gun.
Maverick isn't the greatest guy.
He's not the greatest dude.
So it's almost a hallmark of his career that he's very rarely squeaky clean. Like he almost always plays Tom Cruise, but people really wanted to see him play Maverick again. There's something about going to see Tom Cruise be himself on screen that is incredibly cinematic.
Yes.
And in this, the opening sequence actually reminded me of my favorite Mission Impossible 3. We did a YouTube video about the opening of that. Has anyone seen that one with Philip Seymour Hoffman?
Yes,
I
yeah.
like it.
At the very beginning, Philip Seymour Hoffman has apparently the woman that Tom Cruise loves, tape over her mouth, gun to
Michelle
her
Monaghan,
head.
I believe.
That's the one, yeah. And he's saying, where's the rabbit's foot? I'm going to count to 10. And Tom Cruise goes through this whole array of different emotions as he's trying to find, he's tied to a chair. He's trying to weasel or think or outmaneuver or brute force his way out of an unwinnable situation. It's J.J. Abrams revitalizing Mission Impossible because John Woo, unfortunately, left it in an unpopular place in 2000. A lot of people love Mission Impossible 2. I'm not one of them, but I really like Mission Impossible 3. At the beginning, with Brendan Gleeson, he sits him down and goes, we're sending you to the front lines. And he's come in thinking he's going to do some sort of military PR thing. And they don't go into, you could miss exactly why the army want to send him to his death. They want him out of the way. This is effectively an assassination.
Yeah.
But he goes through a whole sequence where he's sat there and he grins with that kind of embarrassed way that Tom Cruise does, when he's in interviews or things, he sort of grins. He's like, I want to be somewhere else now. And so he, he goes through, first off, puzzlement. Then he goes through rationalization and says, I'm not a fighter, I can't do this. And Brendan Gleeson plays his role perfectly in that he is implacable. He's like, doesn't matter to me, I'm going to send you to the front, boy. And then he's joking. It's like, I can't stand the sight of blood, not even a paper cut. That doesn't work. Then he brushes it off and is a kind of like, I'm just not going to do this. Then he politely declines and says, I'm just going to have to not do this. And it's like, no, you're going to the front, boy. And then he causes a diversion by says, I can name some people who are, like he's trying to weasel out in any possible way.
Casual blackmail.
And then when that doesn't work, he threatens Brendan Gleeson. Like he stands up and goes, if this happens and people start asking why it happened, I might just put your name in the ring. And Brendan Gleeson's like, fuck off, you're going to die. And then he pretty much rabbits. He tries to run away and then gets tased. And he is caught like a rat. That's the best characterization sequence in this whole film.
It is.
And I really wish that this film had been him like that at the beginning, and at the very end, he's gone through so much shit that he actually becomes selfless.
Completely agree with you there.
The problem is he reaches that point really early, and all it takes is a couple of montages.
Yeah.
And we've basically just got ourselves back to kind of Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible.
Well, it
feels like...
And even some regression in some sense, because when he finally meets up with Gleason again, or the general, he's like, you're not good enough to handle this. And instead of, there's so many ways he could have gotten that out of the safe, he still tries to pull the man card on the general.
Yeah.
I will say, though, he's gone through, they don't say, but I would assume over a year's worth of time between some of these, like... I mean, how long does it take before you kind of just accept your fate, Like, does 1,000 days of getting killed? Yeah, 10,000 hours of getting shot?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The thing is, the movie, I think, would need to convey that a little bit
They did not. I had no idea. No sense of time in this movie.
Maybe take the line of the Rocky, do more montages.
Yeah. So,
come on.
The thing that
Rocky IV, all montages.
Yeah.
All montages.
We just talked about that.
Well, it is kind of funny that you mentioned that. It does feel like, and it's hard to avoid with a movie like this, with this concept, but it does feel like at one point the movie switches from character development to a montage film. And
oops, all montages?
Yeah, it does feel like it's all montages, or just skipping emotional turns in his character without you being included in that. So there are moments where it does try to take a beat and show you some of what he's going through, but I felt like I was left out of the loop in some of those cases where he looks like he's visually going through something, but I wasn't taken on that trip.
Yeah, and there's a big, I think the movie's biggest, the riskiest thing that this movie does is in the middle when we realize that Cage has kind of formed this relationship with Rita Vertasky, and you realize that he's gotten to know her over who knows how many days. And that's the big, are you with this movie or are you not? Where I'm like, did you want to see that progression, or does this work better because we just skipped right to it? And I'm still kind of
the whole thing is seeing her from his viewpoint.
Right.
So then at that scene, that pivotal scene at the farmhouse where he's like, this is as far as we get, you don't make it any further. You're now seeing him from her viewpoint.
Yeah.
And she is just as blank as us in terms of, I don't remember all of this characterization that we went through together.
Right.
What's missing is he's not tired enough. There are 2 or 3 points in this film where we get the barest glimpse of how many times he's had to go through this. I think there's a point where he meets Rita and she says, no, I can do this, I can train you. And he's just like, you already have. He needed to be so slumped, so defeated at that point. And then again, I would have said when they go back and they're trying to get past Brendan Gleeson to the safe. I do like the bit where he, it's the first time we see it happen, but Rita pulls the gun out and he's like, no, don't shoot him again. Just the offhand way that's done. We know that this has already been played out, but I think that split second of seeing in his performance how many times he's done this, we don't have to see him do it over and over again, but he does.
I feel like the London sequence where he leaves and kind of goes to get a beer, that's kind of trying to showcase that. I think that's what they had in mind.
Yes.
They didn't show it very well, and I was a little confused at that moment because there wasn't much dialogue, and then aliens attacked and everything, but that's kind of what I think they were trying to do.
His attempt at escape.
Yeah, so the part about that bothered me on a character level was that he was escaping, which makes sense with, his personality. He tries to get out of all these situations, and he was having a rough time. Like, that's the moment where you see how tired he is. But it felt like there wasn't any emotional connection for him to be a part of this mission. It was more like, oh, well, I'm going to die anyway, no matter where I go. So I have to do this. So in my mind, it didn't feel like he really had a reckoning of any kind. It kind of felt like it was glossed over, like, oh, well, I guess I have to just get back to the grind kind of a thing.
Yeah.
I think so. I would kind of give it the benefit of the doubt. And similar to what I talked about with the Scott Pilgrim episode, with the kind of gutter space between the different cycles of his day. You know, necessarily we're not going sequentially from iteration 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's, 1, 2, 57, 130. Like, there's so many things that are happening between that it's kind of implicit in what he's learning. But Sharon, what you just mentioned there really kind of draws that back, because we don't see him physically, that we don't see that wear on him, what anyone would endure going through all that, even if they are growing. All we see is him getting stronger in his martial ability.
Yeah.
It's missing a key emotional scene that hurts us as an audience.
Yes.
You said it was very influential. I did some totting up of all of the time loop films that were made in and around this period since then. Mm-hmm. You mentioned Source Code, the one with Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yep.
That's like a 7-minute time loop, so it's not the whole Groundhog Day, but it's definitely got that kind of repeat thing going on. Have you guys seen Happy Death Day 1 and Happy Death Day 2U?
Unfortunately, no, and it's on my list of movies to watch.
I've seen the first one.
Both of those films have moments that just slay you. Like that, it's like, okay, we've got what this is about. Like the concept is great, and then there's a bit that wrong foots you and catches you. And both of those films are really high quality as a result. Palm Springs with Andy Samberg, again, like, has moments that make you just pull the rug out from under your feet.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
This absolutely needed that. And starting the film without an ending and knowing you definitely didn't want... At the end of the original novelette, after they've won and beaten the Ujima Flip alien thing, Vertansky attacks him and says, her theory is that the only way we can break out this loop is if one of us is dead. So he fights her unwillingly and eventually kills her. And she dies, and clearly that was on the table for the end of this particular film, and they decided against it. But the end is nothing. It's nothing in particular. The whole third act is all tactical. Like, no one cares about the aliens. We care about the characters we've invested in. Like, these aliens, as you say, they're not sitting down to dinner. They're just, like, they may as well come from friggin' Michael Bay's version of Cybertron. Just
Yep.
Or like those the beasties in the Eternals. There's nothing to them except for that one beastie who could talk and was very, very clever in the Eternals. And then they cut him in half, and it's like, well, we've done away with that character. We won't bother about him. Crow.
Might as well be fighting a hurricane.
Yeah, Russian Doll is all drama. The Netflix series.
Yes.
Yep.
I also added About Time, because even though it's not like a pre-organized loop, this guy, Brendan Gleeson's son, Donald Gleeson, can live the same day repeatedly, just to sort of like do things differently in those. Like, he can go back in time manually and kind of redo things. And that one, again, like, we did a whole podcast about how some of the best time travel stories are ultimately dramas at heart. And, it really helps if there's comedy, and some of the best elements of this are playing around with it. And it's the bits in Groundhog Day when Phil finally realizes what he can do and pushes against the boundaries of what he can't do. The problem is when time travel stories start getting a bit too focused on the mechanics of what's going on, the audience sort of loses interest, because we don't care really about fictional time travel mechanics. We care about what applies to us in our own personal lives and what feels analogous to our own weaknesses, our own feelings and misgivings. And so if we've got a character who starts as a weasel but is likable as a weasel, a Tony Stark, if you will, you're kind of compelled along by... Like, Tom Cruise was going to play Tony Stark, and I think he did a fantastic job as well, but RDJ is permanently branded in my head
he's in there.
as him. But yeah, we were invested in Tom Cruise, And there could absolutely have been a real kicker in that third act.
Yeah.
Just something like, I mean, even if it did have to be, I have to kill you or you have to kill me. That is an ending that people would remember.
Right.
And if they had to follow up on it.
Yeah, and this movie, as we all know, the script was not finished while they were making this movie. And it's kind of highly evident.
Yeah.
I do think this movie, though, I come out on the highly positive on it, though, because it just gets those first two acts so well. Like, I love I agree, it needed an emotional kick, but I do love, there's something exhilarating, and maybe it's the lizard brain in me, of just seeing Tom Cruise go loop for loop for loop, progressing a little bit farther, a little bit farther, a little bit farther. It's just a great, like...
I do think the parts that I laughed at the most were anytime he would get injured and she
when
would
he
have
rolls
to
in front of the truck.
She's like, your leg is broken. He's like, no, it's fine. I can get up.
Yeah. Reese, it is your lizard brain, by the way. I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
We do get desensitized to death because we see him die countless times.
Yep.
And so you have to find this special something that actually twists the knife in your gut.
Yeah.
And that is doable. And even going back earlier in history, not history, but film time, Primer, obviously time travel heavy, and it was written by engineers, so it's very heavy on the technical of the time travel and all that stuff. But even then, we see it spiral out of control, and the characters there become deranged and turn on each other and turn on themselves and all this stuff. And so there's still that emotional weight. So it can definitely be done, and yeah, they missed the mark a little bit here.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, if the actual end, they were really close with how it went, because if you think about it, the actual finale is like a last ditch, almost like a Rogue One.
Right.
We've got to do this, otherwise.
Yeah.
I was thinking Rogue
ruined.
One as well.
Yeah, but if it had been like, we can't go back, this is the one final chance, and if Cage was trying his best to keep everyone alive, like, I've done this so many times, I've kept you alive, we can do this, we can get through this whole mission, kill this queen, and we will all walk out of here. If, like, it's a slow erosion where, like, you lose someone that we're not getting back, you as an audience, especially if you've learned to like these characters, you start to miss them, even if you've seen them die a dozen times before.
Right.
You're like, oh, that was the last death. Oh, no, please, not that person. And then, like, it can slowly eat away at Cage until it's just him and Rita left. And then eventually they realize that neither of them can get out of this. But then when it goes back, when the time loop closes, it closes there. So it doesn't have a, hooray, everything's great. And literally everyone lived. Which is what they it's not so much a cheat, but it's very much a hand wavy, and everything was fine.
And everything is fine.
They all live happily ever after.
I think
nothing had to be sacrificed to win a war, which kind of feels like the opposite of the beginning, where it's like, you're being drafted to go in a war, there's nothing you can do about it, and you're going to die.
Yeah.
It becomes at the end, if you throw the right grenade into the right hole, you can get out of war and, in fact, end all war. No one can relate to that at all.
No. It is, in fact, teaching precisely the wrong message that certain video games teach by virtue of their mechanic, which is that if you bash your head against this enough, eventually you can hit a point where you can do a perfect run and you don't have to feel the frustration of losing anybody or losing anything.
Hey, I've been there. I've done that.
There's an interesting thing they could have done with this to add some more weight to it. And I think it's in the relationship between Cage and Rita. Like, they could have played more on this, like, I've known you for so long type angle, but you've only known me for this, like,
30 seconds.
hour of time. And there's nothing that they do with that I feel like it would have been interesting. They kind of try with the whole, like, oh, you like your coffee with 3 sugars or whatever, and that's like awkward because
her middle name is Rose.
Am I wrong in thinking Andy McDowell's character in Groundhog Day was also named Rita?
Was she? I didn't even know that.
Phil
that's crazy.
Knows everything about her, and in that last day, she knows only what she's seen of him. Oh my god! I'm so sorry. Carry on.
Just I was done.
Dates. 50 first dates all over again.
Yeah.
Just through world combat.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah.
But the sense of sacrifice really, I mean, they modeled a lot of the context and tone after D-Day. I mean, this released in the States on June 6th. So the invasion of Normandy, the beach, and all that stuff, this huge sacrifice.
Well, Operation
that
Downfall, which is what they called the thing that's happening, that they're gonna. This was going to be the final push to take down the aliens.
Yeah.
That actually, Operation Downfall was a real operation in Japan right before the bombs dropped.
It was going to be the invasion of the land invasion before the atomic weapons were used. But yeah, I mean, so D-Day carries this huge emotional weight of a vast amount of sacrifice for, greater good, whatever, what have you. We just, they put that there and all the maps and all the stuff in the background, but we don't feel the sacrifice. At least I don't really.
There's a massive influence on this, which actually might not necessarily be felt right now in 2022 when we're recording this. I don't know how old you guys are, but I started podcasting in 2007, around about the height of PlayStation 3 era video games, so Xbox 360. I noted down every video game that this reminded me of from that era, because before Marvel movies, this was the style. Okay, we've got grey and brown shooters, especially where you're fighting aliens, robots, or alien robots. I tried to avoid things like your Call of Duties, your Medals of Honors, but you've got Gears of War, Resistance Fall of Man, Killzone 2, Halo Reach, specifically of the Halo series. Halo Reach was the gritty one where they tried to be more like Call of Duty. Inversion, Time Shift, Body Count, Black Site, Haze, Red Faction Armageddon, Fuse, Binary Domain, Bulletstorm, Crisis 2, Brink, Dark Sector, Alpha Protocol, Turning Point, Fall of Liberty, Space Marine, Homefront, and MAG. Yeah. Some of those you're just fighting regular armies, right? But I did, that was the second one. Resistance had 3 whole games. There was. But it now seems to be like, because everything needs to be a AAA live service, you get things like Anthem, where you're flying around in an Iron Man suit and there's blue glowy things and it's like big lush environments. And Gears of War became much more lush as a result. Like as time went on and they could, like people tended to like colors more. But the fact that those movies were only a few years before this movie means that they took their tone from all those games.
Yeah.
And
I can see it.
That 2000s like gritty, color drained, desaturated look, but also if you play all those games back to back, it numbs you to any sense of impact of death. So that made this whole film feel like a video game, which is great if you're watching something play out and you're not really supposed to care, but that's not what really grabs people.
Right.
Like, actually being supposed to care, especially in cinema, does grab people.
Yeah. I feel like the movie is very reliant on the gimmick of this has never, like, we've never seen a time loop occur in a alien apocalypse. Like, that's the pitch for this movie.
Very specific.
And no one had seen.
You could almost say this movie is its own concept and its own pitch, and then it kind of runs out of steam. It's doing its own mechanics, and then goes, and then we just sort of end happily. Yeah. Killed the alien queen. Yay.
One little difference from the book that I recall is Rita's character. She is kind of this hero instead of just this badass.
Yeah.
That's super good at killing. Like, she grew up, she enlisted it, illegally too young, and she survives Verdun and this huge. She basically goes out of her way to save people around her.
Yeah.
She's safe. She doesn't want people to get hurt instead of, oh, no, in this movie, she's just there to, kick ass and take names.
Why not? Like, that would have made her like, you've got a character who doesn't care about people, and then a character who apparently doesn't care about people, but really does, but can't let herself care about people.
And even if they had that, just to have some transference of that ability to grow and care about other people, at least in Cage in this movie, he kind of, tended towards doing that. When he first few times through the loop and starts getting better, he saves, I think Kimmel is his name, the guy that wears his suit naked, And when
yeah.
the chopper crashes on him, like he finally ends up saving him and, you know, saving other people from getting blown up in the face. But then that just gets all forgotten for
But that
reason.
then plays into that concept of this is what happens if you end up having to live the same thing over and over and over again. You will find yourself trying to save as many people as you can. It happens in Groundhog Day.
Little brat, you have never thanked me. I'll see you tomorrow. Maybe.
Yeah. And I do want to talk a little bit about Rita Vertansky. We haven't talked about her at all.
Yeah, the wonderful Emily Blunt.
Yeah, yes. Emily Blunt.
You're welcome, by the way, America, for Britain's own Emily Blunt.
I will say also the fact that we chose a movie that was a good representation of both America and England working together, which is interesting.
Yeah. I want to put her almost up there at the Furiosa level in terms of modern action heroines. I think, I don't know, when she comes onto the stage, I think, by the way, if you've read the book, Emily Blunt's interpretation of this character is much better than the one in the book.
Oh, really?
In the one in the book, she's very soft-spoken and almost like, I don't know, like you feel like you could convince her to change her mind about things.
Infantilized?
Yes.
A little bit Evangelion there?
Yeah. Emily Blunt's take on it is like, I've done, you can tell, she's done this 1,000,000 times and I have no time for your bullshit. Like it's, and I just love that about that character. And
the thing I like about her is that she very much has shields up, where if she gives you any time, she's going to change her mind, kind of a thing. She knows that. And so she limits that amount of time for her to even think. You know, because she's like, no, we have to do this because this is what needs to be done, kind of a thing.
And just for listeners, like, she plays the Angel of Verdun. She has a much worse title in the book, as we all know.
They bring it up in the movie.
They almost reference it.
Yeah, it's in the movie.
Yeah, it's in the movie, but that guy gets punched in the face. In the book,
that's her brother.
Yeah, that is her
punches the boss.
I just like I like her approach to this character. I just think that it was a wise choice to do away with all of the I don't know, the soft-spoken nature of her character in the book, and she actually seems hardened by everything that's happened, and it almost makes that kiss at the end feel weird and off because you don't believe in that chemistry.
I think we all probably felt a little twinge there.
Sharon said it was like a fish being slapped with a glove.
Yeah. Because she's
who's the
known
fish in this scenario?
There's a random, when we were watching this, Irene and I, literally the second they kissed, I was like, that was a quick kiss, and I am very thankful that it was a quick kiss.
Yeah, and what's funny about that is apparently Tom Cruise didn't even know he was about to be kissed.
Oh.
Like they did a script change, and like she
Emily
just
Blunt
leaned in and
pounced on
kissed him, and he was like taken aback by it because that wasn't the original like plan for that movie. And I'm like,
that is amazing.
Like
that explains.
That totally feels like she bribed a scriptwriter. I have been watching Tom Cruise movies since I was 6. You have to let me kiss him.
We need one here.
Just roll the cameras. I'm going to lunge at him. See what happens.
Yeah.
And they took it
wildly at Tom Cruise. That doesn't usually go down well.
I mean, she trained so well. She put herself through all kinds of training for combat, yoga. She learned Krav Maga for this. So even if Tom had tried to fight her off, she'd have been pretty handy.
Yeah, I think the two most iconic shots in this movie actually are featuring her. It's the one where Tom Cruise walks in the room and she pushes up from that
the yoga pose.
Up
Why?
dog.
Yeah.
And the upward dog.
Yeah. And also the scene where she's just crawling out of the rubble, like dragging that sword behind her. Like it's so anime and it's so awesome. But no, she's great. Like Emily Blunt, amazing in this movie.
No, I love what she's able to inject with just a little bit of screen time. Wow, screen time. And I weirdly felt more connected to her than I felt I was connected to Cage.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I know it was mentioned before where it feels like you're seeing her through his eyes, and maybe that's why. But I don't know. I felt like even with the little details, I felt like I knew more about her history than his.
Yeah.
And I just love her portrayal of that character.
I also love the scene where Tom Cruise finally looks like a badass, and she's like, "This guy, he can't know all this shit." Like, and she's like, "Oh, He's got what I had.
The thing
hey, meet me when you die. Like,
the thing I like about her character is that she has no bravado either.
Yep.
It's just like, no,
she's getting a job.
We're taking care of trash. Like she's chaotic good, basically. There's no reservations in her mind. She has nothing to prove because she's just doing it.
Which, by the way, the more you know about the fact that she doesn't have that gift anymore when he first meets her, she's still out there kicking ass. Like, knowing she's not going to come back to life. But I was going to bring up the fact that, you know how she's carrying that giant sword? I mean, or whatever you call it. I mean,
it's a helicopter blade.
Yeah.
It was an axe in the novelette, apparently, and some fans got really upset because they like the specificity of very specific things being brought across.
Yeah.
The blade is
to
cooler.
me, it feels like they're trying to get Cloud's Buster blade out of Final Fantasy VII.
well, the whole
That's what I thought of.
the whole point of it being there was to showcase the fact that and I think it would have been cool if they brought it up, but when she was fighting in Verdun, she was constantly going through battles, and she, was reliving the same life just like Tom Cruise's character. She kept running out of battery packs. She kept running out of bullets. And so it came to a point where she's like, screw this. I'm going to take something with me that I can constantly fight with.
So do you think she has to build that blade over and over again?
I doubt it. I'm sure she found it on the battlefield at one point and was like, that's my blade.
Yeah.
Well, in the book, she had it requisitioned specifically. They cut it out of an aircraft wing, and it looks like kind of like an aileron or something that came up. No, it's a prop rotor in the movie.
Does she have to do it every Groundhog Day?
I don't know, but I guess she had a bunch of them built, and Cage actually ends up using one of the spares because he's trying to learn her style in the book. I thought that was kind of cool because she ends up, both of them in their elite skills end up turning off the auto balance on the suit,
taking their helmets
not
off.
using the HUD, and the book talked about how had that tungsten carbide battle axe is what they called it in the book. You swinging that with the power of the mech suit behind you, like if you don't control that correctly, all that momentum and inertia will twist your spine in half. That's what makes it dangerous. So I kind of wish they brought that element of like extreme danger, high risk, high reward kind of thing here. And I don't know. I feel like some of it was successful with the mech suits, and then when they're out of it, they're still human again. But
we need a whole segment
tungsten
on that.
carbide battle axe sounds like a fancy way of saying full metal bitch, though.
Yeah,
so they didn't kind of bring that into the movie.
That needs to be my new tag name in gaming.
Maybe not.
I'm sure there are a lot of people with that one now.
All right, so let's move on towards the end of the story here. We've kind of been jumping all around, but Cage obviously getting better at. He's come to terms with how to I don't know, fight these things off. He's made his way all the way to as far as he thinks he can go. Rita keeps dying, and he's like, he doesn't like that because he's kind of grown attached to her.
I don't like that.
Yeah, he's kind of grown attached to her, so he's like trying every option he can to find a scenario where she makes it out.
In my mind, it almost felt like a dependence on her. Where he felt like I can't get through this without her. But there's one point where he realizes, no, I have to do this alone, kind of a thing. So I kind of wish that was pushed a little more because I like that concept. It's something that I would probably do thinking, oh, well, they've been through this before. They know what they're doing. I need to have them with me.
Yeah.
But realizing, I can't actually take them with me. I have to just,
that
muster
felt
up.
like that felt like a really important character moment.
Yeah.
Because it's like, on the one hand, it's almost like he's saying, if I don't go and find her, then maybe she won't get killed, and he's doing it to protect her. But in actual fact, he's doing it to protect himself because she could get killed anywhere. It doesn't have to be anything to do with him.
Right.
But this way, he doesn't have to know about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this kind of gets hand-waved away, and we kind of enter our third stage here where everyone is kind of recruited. He's able to convince his J Squad, that okay, we gotta go do this. Like this part was like, okay, we just gotta get to the finale.
They really
it was like,
all
right, speed through this. This is the writing part. We're like, okay, just make it happen.
Everyone will accept it. Everyone's on board.
Yeah, and of course, like this hive mind thing is that under the Louvre for whatever reason. Cool. Like the most obvious. Like, okay, cool.
It's in France.
The aliens
Name the
don't
top
know
3
that.
things in France that the alien might be hiding under. And it's not the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah. But, action movie, I'm like, fine. That's cool. Let's do it. Let's do this. So we have our final push towards the end. Almost all J Squad is picked off. He comes across they're alphas, or what are they called? The second tier.
Yeah, you're right. Alphas.
Yeah, and we figure out that they've been trying to get his blood the whole time. By the way, what a weird time loop mechanic. Like, oh, it's in your blood.
I'm on board with it.
I know, but it's weird. Like, I don't know. I feel like there's a way to simplify
it's
this.
aliens.
Yeah, there's a way to simplify this to not
crystals.
Yeah.
So
whatever.
it kind of feels like it's an infection of some kind, Yeah. Because you get sprayed with blood, and then it's in your blood
District
system.
9.
Yeah.
Except for instead of being an
and
alien,
that was just the gas for their ship turns them into an alien.
Yeah.
So he does go out solo. He figures out where they are. Realizes that this has been the whole plan. They're trying to. They know that I'm going to try to get in here, and this is why they're going to try and get my blood. Then we do have our final sequence. I'm getting my plot all mixed up here, but yeah, J Squad was recruited. They're out there. They get killed, and the hive mind is ultimately killed by Tom Cruise's grenade, as you said earlier, Alex. Yeah, we zip back to before the original loop started. Tom Cruise, it's before his meeting with Brendan Gleeson's character, and
General Brigham.
Yeah, inexplicably, the alien invasion has been squelched.
So this is where I get all my questions coming in, and it's probably answered through people that have read, the novelette or whatever. But so when he does drop the grenades, it looks like the alpha kills itself because it wants to start over the day before it's destroyed. Is that what happened?
I don't know.
We talked about this. Irene and I, that was her initial reaction. I didn't pick up on that until she explained it, and I'm definitely on board with that theory.
There's that, but I don't know exactly how that would work in this scenario. And when he does wake up, it's more like everyone's in a state of confusion as far as what's going on with the aliens. And it's as if they aren't completely eradicated. It's more like they were gearing up for something, but there's like this strange pulse and now they're inactive.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just everyone's in confusion. They're like, I don't know. This could mean
Unclear.
that it's done, or there might be a sequel, you know? So I'm guessing that's what it's kind of heading towards.
Yeah, the ending's the most confusing part, for sure.
The least written part of the
Weird how that
almost like you need a good script and a good 3-act structure.
I was so confused as to why the loop started earlier and now none of it had happened.
I have a theory. I don't know if it works at all. I was trying to describe it to Irina. She didn't really buy it. I'll throw it to you guys. We'll see what you guys think.
What do you got?
So I think when Rita Vertasky she loses her power, right?
Yeah.
Then the hive mind thing gets its power, the Omega gets the power back, and they kind of reset the day to that spawn point. I think of that as the moment Tom Cruise is on the airplane that he wakes up at the very end. That is where the aliens decide that's the new spawn point. And then from that point on, even if he loses the power, whenever they respawn, even though they died, it reset that day back to whenever it took full control to reset the day. So that's like the new spawn point. Even though it dies back then, not in the current time period.
Interesting.
I don't even know if I'm explaining that correctly, but that's how my brain
I need a visual aid. I don't learn very well just listening to people talk about something.
I know.
Ironic since I'm on a podcast.
After that all happens, Cage meets back up with Rita. She's doing her little Cobra push-up thing again, and he smiles, and it's like, oh, good times ahead.
It's a good ending for something that makes no sense.
Yeah, exactly. It's that. Alex and Sharon, what do y'all think about the resolution to this film?
I refer back to I wish that this had felt like something was given in order to get people free of this particular war. It feels like, like a film with no consequences and a film where everybody's happy at the end. The way that Doug Liman described it was, people won't mind because it's a comedy. And it is, but it's billed as a big alien shooting sci-fi.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's so many fantastic examples within this field that when we get to the ratings bit, I've rated it, I think, pretty harshly for the competence that it displays. But that's because it's up against aliens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's up against truly excellent sci-fi, which is absolutely our wheelhouse. And for me, it's like the concept is already thought of. So if all your movie is doing is visualizing that concept, you're not really doing much more than going, hey, imagine if this. Okay, yep, no, I got it. What's going to happen with that? Nothing much in particular, but, it ends happy.
That damp squib sense really ticked me off as well. And
not so much any time before we had to actually analyze it. We found this with when we did Raiders of the Lost Ark, followed by Temple of Doom. Mm-hmm. Loads of people were like, hey, buddy, I like Temple of Doom. And it's absolutely fine to like Temple of Doom. But if you go really deep on Raiders, which we went just on the actual, the craft of the thing,
right,
and then get to Temple, it's much more fun to watch and not think about.
Yeah.
But then if you're watching it like this and going, okay, so what does this mean? Suddenly you actually start seeing not plot holes you could drive a truck through, but where they have kind of abandoned the writing and just hand-waved an action sequence.
Yeah. For me, it's not so much the fact that you get that final reset. It's not that undoes whatever loss has been experienced in that last section. It's the fact that when the loss plays out, you don't really feel it. That sense of slowly his squad ticks down one person at a time. It's not hitting me because I never really got to know these people. I know Tom Cruise knows them.
Yeah.
I vaguely know their names, but I don't know anything about them as people. There's no connection to them for me. And even him losing Rita doesn't feel like the kind of loss that it needs to feel like at that point.
Right.
Even if he gets her back at the end, that's fine, but make me feel it in the moment, and it just didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that for me could have even been altered by him swapping roles with her, where he's like, no, I'm going to distract the alpha, you go, because I know that you will get this done, kind of a thing.
It would have actually been kind of cool to see, I don't know if this would have worked, but the first half of the movie being in Rita's loop and the second half being in his loop.
Oh, that would be interesting, yeah.
I don't know, build, I don't know. Maybe I'm completely wrong and I shouldn't do anything, but...
completely agree with you, Sharon. I think that part, recruiting the J Squad, there's a little bit of excitement in that where I'm looking forward to it. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, they're going to work as a team. That's going to be cool. But, 3 of them get killed off in the first 5 seconds of them reaching France, I guess, or Paris. And then 2 are like, oh, we'll create a distraction. I don't really know anything about them other than they were really easy to convince into this. So then you're left with Rita and Cage ends up being the final, having the final battle in the end.
Yeah.
And he ends up waking up fine anyway.
This is why there hasn't been a Groundhog Day in a war. What we're describing is a conflict between the mechanics of this type of story where you start to devalue death because you're just focusing on where's the character going to go, and the mechanics of war, which is people get killed every few seconds, and we're supposed to not want that to happen from watching things like Saving Private Ryan.
So
or even Pacific Rim, which is a prime example of something people hand wave as, oh, it's just Transformers, it's just big robots hitting lizards. No, we did a really in-depth show on that. It's Guillermo del Toro. He doesn't do things that are just hand-waving, nonsense. It's everything matters.
Yeah.
And if you approach a film in a kind of, it doesn't matter, then that's what the end result is going to be.
Yeah.
And this is why it felt more like a video game than anything else.
Right.
But explore that. You've got the perfect opportunity there to look at the fact that, okay, if you are in a war situation and you get stuck in a time loop, you're going to have to make a choice over who it is acceptable for you to lose.
Yeah.
Because you cannot save everybody every day. And the whole point of that they play it out in Groundhog Day and in other versions of this as well. When you do a good thing, when your central character does a good thing, they want to hang on to that because they don't know when this time loop is going to go away. And they don't want the day it goes away to be the day they didn't do that good thing. So have that be the story. Somebody who is trying to save and save and save and eventually has to accept they cannot save everyone and it's probably going to be random chance who they get to walk out
because
of
that's something that can actually affect us and actually does apply to our own anxieties.
Yeah, this
as
goes,
opposed to it all being based on the science of it, which is all just sci-fi mumbo-jumbo anyway. Even if it does make sense on someone's paper somewhere, we don't walk out of the cinema going, I understood all of that, and that's the important thing.
This goes back to just my issue with how much time we spend with Cage in general, is that you, as a viewer watching this movie, you're presented with your first image of him being slimy and a weasel. And so basically what they're telling you is, hey, that's going to change by the end of this. And I never got anything that really proved to me that he changed on a basic character or fundamental level. It was all kind of like everything guided him into this result, where he still, to me, didn't embody that sense of sacrifice that everyone around him did. Everyone else seemed to sacrifice so that he could get to the end goal. You know what I mean? So that I feel like I don't really respect his character all that much by the end of the movie.
Hey, he was shot in the head like 1,000 times.
Yeah, but that's one of those things where it's desensitization. It's not so much him finally realizing that, you know, sometimes doing the right thing doesn't mean you're going to be rewarded, but you know that it's the right thing to do. So maybe
actually giving it to an actual Captain America, like if Steve Rogers had been this guy, much more interesting film.
But
what is a hero?
Nobody else has to sacrifice in this. I will take every sacrifice on my shoulders because I know I'm coming back.
Right.
That might have been the right way to approach this because in the end, there's a little bit of sadness knowing like he went through all this and nobody's gonna know. He goes back to everyone's preconceptions that he is a spineless twerp. Like that's kind of that's what everyone is thinking because that's where he goes back to. But he has gone through enough to at least redeem himself a little bit. I think like he did go through the shit, you know, as Tropic Thunder would say. It just I think that there's a little bit more to him than I don't know we've given him. I like his character. I think that there is some redemption. It's just that we are desensitized to it because of the film style.
There's a lot of action montages. He goes from just a beginner to a pro several times.
The content is there. You kind of have to mine for it. And I think that's just a product of not having a strong script before you're filming. But I do want to speak to Reese, Lizard Brain to Lizard Brain. Talk about even the opening sequences of the battle. I mean, that's what really kind of wowed me and maybe started the desensitization.
Yeah.
But even like the rocket trails, like taking kind of like a double helix kind of
I noticed that, like
shape
DNA
and,
looking like, it was cool.
I would say that was at least immersive. And
yes,
the mech suits and that kind of learning curve, that was successful. That was definitely a win in my book.
Well, we didn't even talk about the actual fact that they built these mech suits. Like they studied military mech suits, and then they had some guy build legitimate mech suits that they had to study and practice and put on quickly. I mean, it's not CG. They really built these out, and they're moving around in these lumbering metal suits.
Apparently, they were like 85 pounds.
Yeah, they're heavy.
Emily Blunt was not happy when she first put it on.
And then they said after they kept doing it, which makes sense for this kind of movie, they got more used to it.
Well, despite some of how this episode may sound like it's going, I am very positive on this movie. So
I'm just gonna say I'm a little positive too.
Yeah, I'll save it for my review, but clearly a lot of work went into this movie. I think the action, it is an action movie, and I think the action is spectacular. I love seeing the different variations of action throughout the movie, just like, oh, do this the same, but slightly adjust. Like, I think it's very cleverly paced out. So, and it's engaging. I don't think there's a lot of emotional heft, which is what I could have done more with.
Yeah.
But as in terms of like, if I'm just turning my brain off and I'm watching a time loop action movie, this is the one I'm going to recommend people to watch.
This was faster.
The heart is missing and lacking, but the exoskeleton is definitely there. And they've clearly focused on that. And so maybe that's a director priority thing, studio, producer, what have you. But a lot of movie and productions now, they don't even have VFX supervisors because they don't consider it to be important. They just think that VFX is just a magic wand you wave and boom, it's there.
Just put the duct tape on all the cracks.
I mean, that's ridiculous.
As much as I love Marvel, that's my main criticism with them. Just the like, oh yeah, director, do your stuff, and then these other people,
fix it.
The other people will take care of the action stuff. Don't worry about it.
And so Nick Davis was the VFX supervisor here, and he did Batman Forever, the first 2 Harry Potters, Troy, The Dark Knight, and then The Clash and Wrath of the Titans, the newer one. So I feel like there's an effort to make some of this, like you talked about, the practical suits and stuff. The costume design was Kate Hawley, I think, and she's worked with our boy Peter Jackson.
Yeah.
But so some of the focus and priority, they missed the mark on characterization, important. All the exterior stuff, I think they really nailed.
Yeah.
To at least present this as I don't know, not necessarily a real thing that could happen, but you are in this world.
Exactly.
At least I was pulled into it.
No, I was too.
Any final thoughts on Edge of Tomorrow before we move into the closing portion of this podcast?
We didn't really cover much of the CG, but I will say it was extensive, and they also balanced it with good practical effects.
Good balance there. I do agree. That's what I like to see. Just more of a not less just goopy CGI that's so obvious. More better integration of actual practical with CGI just to kind of touch things up. All right. With that said, go ahead.
Just to add something on the CGI front, the disservice that I think gets done with that attitude of it doesn't matter, they can fix it in post. And yes, Marvel of late are falling down that well, and I really want them to be a bit more careful of that going forward. I don't think they will be. But the problem is that you not only shit on what's going on in your stuff, you disrespect the productions that have got that good balance of CG and practical that have gone in the past, because people start looking at everything that came before as if that was just all post-production CG. They don't recognize when it is great stunts and it is great practical and it is great props and costumes. They just start getting desensitized to everything that isn't a person.
Yeah,
exactly. And even having that limitation, we've talked about budget limitations inspiring, good work in some of these directors, but having a limitation of not being able to wave a magic wand and boom, that's there how you want it.
Right.
You have to be creative. I mean, even Kubrick, he had to create the contraptions and the sets and the stages to have it how he wanted it. You couldn't just say, oh, I want it like this, we'll figure it out later.
Yeah.
I mean, even David Fincher, as meticulous as he is, he will actually have a hand in the VFX post and have input on that, as opposed to, I'll draw a picture of what I want, make it happen. Because even the actors, like Ian McKellen, he did not have a good experience on the set of The Hobbit because it's all green screen.
Right.
The interaction and making things real for the actors brings out their talents instead of, just pretend this thing is here instead of this tennis ball.
Yeah.
So that's part of the director's job, is to balance that. And, it's part of the overall work. And I think that was pretty well accomplished in this particular film.
Agreed. All right. With that said, that closes out our discussion on the film Edge of Tomorrow. We're going to move into our brief reviews with numbered scores, box office, what critics thought, and close out with a very short franchise talk portion. So we'll see y'all then. All right, welcome back. Let's talk Edge of Tomorrow, Live, Die, Repeat, whatever you want to call it. David, you got our scores there in a bowl. You want to pull them at random?
I sure do. Let's see. What do we got first? Irina with an 8.5.
All right.
Yeah, so I was negative on a lot of aspects, but I tend to usually do that when it's something that I fall kind of positively on, just to balance it out. But kind of in similar sentiments to you, Reese, it's one of those movies where I can shut off my brain and still enjoy it. There are a lot of things I could go into that I would want to fix, honestly, but I think this movie's still fun, and we've sort of talked over all of those aspects already, so I don't have much more to add. I'm kind of sad I didn't see this earlier.
I'm surprised you hadn't seen it.
I had been sort of pushing it off again because I felt like there were so many movies that were already similar, and I was a little overtaxed with seeing Tom Cruise and everything during that time, so I didn't feel the need to watch it. So yeah. I'm glad we talked about it today.
Awesome. 8.5.
All right, next up is AJ with an 8.
Yeah, some of this was tough for me because there's all the, like I talked about, the immersiveness and the technical aspects of it, of the production, and just the blitz and gling and lizard brain mode. I mean, that definitely peaks the charts there for me. The character development, there's bits and pieces there. You can tell that the script was not a priority, or there were reworks, or, not a plan for the ending. And the ending is definitely the anchor that brings this down for me, unfortunately, because I think there's a great amount of potential here. And I really do appreciate how they adapted this novella from, I guess, video game mode to, I mean, there is a little bit of a twist on the character because he starts off as this kind of twerp guy instead of just a rank and file soldier. They just didn't really capitalize on it properly. So, I mean, without viewing the end of this movie, I would bump this up a whole point, really, a 9, and just kind of pretend that end doesn't exist, because that kind of killed the point of it, in my opinion. There's so much that can be talked about in the terms of sacrifice and desensitization that really just wasn't pushed as much as it could be. But it is, if you're looking for great action movie, popcorn, whatever, turn off your brain, this is it. So I'm going to go with 8.5 overall.
All right. Bumping it up.
All right. Next up is Sharon with a 7.
Yes. It doesn't quite hit the I really like this and want to go back and watch it over and over again, but it is, I can recognize that it is very, very competently made, and I think the performances just tip it above being what could potentially have been quite mediocre if they'd gone for lower level talent.
All right. Next up.
All right.
Talent is important.
Next up, we're going to swing back to Reese with a 9.0.
Nice.
I like this movie, okay? I think that I only dock this movie points for its final act. I am totally on board with the ride for this movie. I think it so cleverly lays out just the whole time loop thing. And it just, the moment you're getting bored with a certain scenario, it introduces something new. And just from a pure visceral level, I enjoyed watching this movie. It's just entertaining. It is a popcorn munching movie. It's it does so many just, I don't know, clever manipulations with the concept, and I've never seen this done to an action movie. So it's just I'm very simple-minded in what I enjoy. So seeing a Groundhog's Day version of an action movie really kind of speaks to me. And as someone who is always on board for a Tom Cruise movie, I know not everyone is. I enjoy Tom Cruise, and I enjoy my time loop action, apparently. So I'm just gonna keep it at that 9.
You know what? Stick with it, man. You know what you like.
Yeah. So there you go.
We're gonna go a different direction now.
Well, it's gonna be Alex.
We're gonna go from host to host here. We're gonna go to Alex Shaw with a 5.
Nice.
5. Now I'm actually being both generous and harsh here at the same time. It might seem like I hate this film, but I don't hate until I'm hitting like the 1s and the 2s. I'm judging it against its peers. I'm thinking about the 2010s. While it's extremely popular nowadays to go, everything's just comic books and superheroes and sequels and adaptations and just sort of like hand wave all of cinema and say, if it's not Marvel, nobody cares. But we've had some amazing science fiction movies in the past 12 years since 2010, of which this is one. And we mentioned a whole bunch, but I'm just going to go in reverse order of I was just jotting these down of, this is better than this. This is better. This is like, what's higher than a 5 for me? Midnight Special, little indie sci-fi, which
Mike
no
Nichols.
one ever actually saw.
Yeah.
That's one of those ones where I'm like, if people say, no, there aren't any original ideas out there. While it's not exactly original, it's totally not an IP from a book or anything like that. So to complain all the time that there's so many adaptations and so many comic books, you've got to go and see Midnight Special to really just to be the one person in the audience there in that quiet. Oh, I forgot about the girl with all the gifts. That technically counts as sci-fi. Mm-hmm. In that quiet auditorium, people don't gravitate towards quote unquote originality. They like what's quantifiable. They like what they know. But there's been so many that have taken risks and not just been stuff that we already know. Star Trek Into Darkness and Beyond, obviously it banked on the Star Trek name, and Into Darkness was the highest grossing Star Trek movie of all time, whether you particularly like the fact that it was a Wrath of Khan remake or not. Mm-hmm. Super 8, I don't know why everyone loves Stranger Things, which I also really like, but just was completely indifferent to Super 8, which is wonderful. 10 Cloverfield Lane, again, just J.J. Abrams, really good producer, but the director of Dan Trachtenberg,
yep,
isn't it? Just recently did Prey, which I forgot and will add to this list as well. Fantastic. Dune. Terminator Dark Fate, Blade Runner 2049, Bumblebee, Godzilla King of the Monsters, Pacific Rim, Arrival, The Planet of the Apes trilogy, and Mad Max Fury Road. And there's not a cape among them. Some of the greatest sci-fi of all time. And then we've got Edge of Tomorrow not really pushing itself. And it's fine. It's a fine, fun movie to watch. It's a comedy, it's an action movie, and I feel like Tom Cruise was still waiting to really grab people again. And I'm actually really glad that he did with Top Gun Maverick, because it feels like that was something that was long awaited. And again, like I said, the idea of people gravitate towards stars in roles in particular. They won't just go see any old Tom Cruise movie, and they don't want to see someone else play Maverick, but Tom Cruise playing Maverick. I don't know. So I am interested to see what the actual financials were on this one, because I don't remember it being absolutely massive. And I think that slight indifference may be down to the fact that it didn't have as much weight to it.
Yeah.
Unlike the Suits.
All right, AJ, you want to average those scores for us?
Oh, really?
Do we need David?
Oh, we need one more. David.
Man.
Yeah,
Wow.
you don't matter. David.
We already know it's a 7, though.
Oh, come on. More like an 8.5. All right.
It was just that rewatchable because there were so many of the same thing you were watching.
You already brought up.
Yeah, you're rewatching it while you're watching it.
We actually are.
Alex and Sharon, just so you know, David, way back in the day when we were first starting off, we watched The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor as part of third movie in the Mummy franchise, and he gave that movie a 7 out of 10, which we found was very generous and he felt was fair.
This was 2.5 years ago.
And we've been trolling him ever since.
I can't get away
So
from it.
it's a running gag.
It is a running gag. There's nothing I can do about it. I wish I could go back.
Go ahead.
If I would, I would, and we'd be like this movie. But 8.5. I think that I thought about it. I tried I just turned my analytical brain off. I went lizard brain for this one as well. I went for just gut reaction. And my gut reaction was, this is definitely not a 9. So I went back and was like,
Which is what I scored.
This is definitely not a 9.
No, that was my gut reaction. We're different. But it was a good movie. I enjoyed my time with this movie. I think that is an important quality when you're watching a popcorn movie. Did you have fun watching this movie? It does nothing to be anything that people are going to talk about in the future in terms of like revolutionary. You know, this isn't the Lord of the Rings. There's some really good special effects, which I prefer. When I rate movies, a lot of sci-fi movies come down to these special effects, and the fact that they did a lot of really unique things.
That's your like, if it's
that topped it from an 8 to an 8.5. I would say it was between an 8 and 8.5, and I really appreciate the effort they went through in this. I love the fact that they built out the full mech suits, that Tom Cruise timed people to get into them, that he got I honestly think a lot of the energy, the frenetic energy you were talking about, Reese, is because Tom Cruise brings out the best in the people around him. He's not going to be, the biggest drama actor, I think, but he will bring out the best in the people around him. And this movie, I think, is showcasing that. I mean,
shout out to Bill Paxton, by the way. Rest in peace.
Peace.
Loved him in this movie.
Yeah, honestly, Bill Paxton was great in this movie. I really liked his character. Was it Captain Farrell or something very similar?
Yep. Master Sergeant
The way
Farrell.
he says, crack of my ass. Like, I'm like...
Exactly. I honestly didn't realize that was him because his accent was so good.
I think one of my favorite lines was, they're like, oh, well, you're American. He's like, no, I'm from Kentucky.
Science Hill. What does that mean? I don't know, and I don't care.
So in the end, I had a good time with this. I definitely started losing steam towards the end. I think I'm giving it a high score, honestly. I knew that going in. I think that this one, if it's rated lower on the box offices and stuff, I would not be surprised. But my gut reaction, I'm going to stick with it. I enjoyed it. 8.5.
All right.
As a visual effects guy, how would you rank the design of this alien? Compared to other movies?
I have facts and other stuff. We didn't go into it, but I really did enjoy the way they designed this alien. I like the way they did the tentacles and everything. They switched from the toad. I won't go into it, but I think they did a good job. I really enjoyed it.
Well, it almost seemed like they were trying to mimic neurons or things.
AJ, you want to break down that score for us? Tell us what's the score for this one?
Okay, so let's do 2 groupings here. So we have our core group minus Noah, unfortunately. David, Irina, Reese, and myself have a group average of 8.6. And then including Alex and Sharon, our guests, we have a group average of 7.75. So
I'm sorry, I think the average.
Don't worry. We've had wild swings in this show.
Yeah.
Contextualizing against its peers is very important. I didn't even think about that, honestly.
Yes. All right. So we will include, I think we should include them in the final ranking just because that only seems fair.
Well,
they put the time in. So
it does seem like when we do a group average, it feels like that average is a more justified answer than our individual.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So 7.8 if it rounds up, right? Correct?
Yep.
Cool.
Wait. I want to hear what's around it. AJ?
Oh, like what movies?
Okay.
Yeah.
We have 2 other 7.8s. Well, technically 1. Immortals, and then The Mummy from 99. That was one of the very early episodes. Also had a 7.8. We have Source Code at an 8.1, Doctor Sleep 8.0, and then we have King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, Ghost in the Shell, and The Equalizer 2, as well as It Chapter 2 at 7.7.
A lot of movies we weirdly liked more than the average public.
Look, we are. I would say our podcast is a lot more positive.
Yeah, we're
than the
generous. I'll
average
just say we're
person.
generous.
We like a lot of movies.
Yeah.
It's a nice way of saying
You
we don't
fish
know what
them
we're
out of the
doing.
gutter where they've been discarded. And it's like, oh, nobody
Dust them
wants
off.
you anymore. We'll find something.
Wipe his
for
Thank you,
nose,
guys.
get a breath mint.
They're like greyhounds that have been abandoned. You guys are doing them all.
All right. Quickly, let's move on to critics. On Rotten Tomatoes, this movie had a 91% from critics and a 90% from audiences.
Wow.
That's a lot higher than I
Okay.
thought.
Yeah, very highly regarded movie, surprisingly. So
This must have puzzled executives if they were like, okay, so the critics like us, the audience like us, but I'm assuming
Didn't
not
make
many
money.
people showed up, so I know
yeah,
you
it's
get
a
into that.
it's a weird one. We're about to get into it. On Metacritic, 71 with an audience score of 8.6, and IMDb it has a 7.9. So that's more in leagues with where we're at here.
Yeah.
Box office. This movie released wide on June 6th in 2014. Also playing at the time was The Fault in Our Stars, Maleficent, X-Men Days of Future Past, A Million Ways to Die in the West, and Godzilla. Of course, this is the American box office. It's probably a little different over there in terms of release schedules for movies. But with a
I think
budget...
it was a week prior in London.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. With a $178 million budget, which is a pretty big
That's
budget.
hefty. That is hefty.
Yeah. What do y'all think this movie did worldwide? And we'll go round table here. And sorry if you don't know box office, just throw a number out there. Cost $178 million. Alex, what you got?
Well, I'm not looking at how much it made, but I did jump to the top highest grossing films of 2014. Number 4 is Maleficent. Number 6 is Days of Future Past.
Yeah.
So it was up against two
Yeah,
heavy
pretty big
hitters.
ones.
Yep.
Okay. I'm gonna say because I'm gonna say I think it did $326 million.
All right. Sharon, how about you?
I think it's got to be somewhere around there because the multiplier cannot have been great.
If you go any
Otherwise,
higher, there would have been a sequel.
they would have been pushing for a sequel. Yeah, so I think it's not topped 500,000 at least. 500 million.
$500 million, yeah.
So you think 500? Okay.
Well, basically,
wait,
X-Men
wait,
Days
did
of Future
she?
Past was 746, so it's got to be less than
Yeah.
that
Wait,
by quite
I don't think
some
she
way.
named her number.
Oh, what was your actual, what's your guess?
Oh, I let's say
327.
492 million.
Oh wow, no, that's way too low.
Don't worry. I'll go next because
David, go for it.
yeah. I just deemed myself because I was gonna go for 400 million. So I'll split the difference.
400?
You jerk. Man, here am I just rounding up numbers. Oh, 200,000. What's double that?
I literally
Oh.
took the budget and I doubled it and then I added a little bit. That's what I did.
All right, I'll subtract.
Man, you could make 2 Jack the Giant Slayers for that.
This is how our game works, though. The
3.
first person always has the worst part.
It's more poker than actual knowing numbers.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, you find out.
Let's do 380.
380 for AJ.
People get boxed in on this game in our show, and it's the worst.
Irina? Let's go, Irina.
Let's do 410.
Oh, see, now I was gonna say I was in the best seat, but now Irina boxed me, and I was hoping you would box Alex in, but dang it.
410. Okay, so who had 380? That was you, David?
No, that was AJ.
AJ, you were the closest. This movie did 371
Dang it.
million worldwide.
Thanks, David.
Nice.
Barely crawled past that 100 million domestically, which is weirdly a big deal over here. Like if you make it over that 100 million, it's like, oh, you're actually kind of like people saw you. That's cool.
Well, I do remember this movie having like a lot of marketing.
Yeah,
I don't
it
know
did
what
have a
the
lot of
budget was,
marketing,
but-
huge marketing campaign. It had a very poor opening. So domestically, it opened at 28 million, which would usually signify a massive bomb. But word of mouth was strong on this one, and people turned out weekend over weekend over weekend, and it managed to finally inch over that 100 million mark. That, in addition to great Blu-ray DVD sales, got the conversation talking about a potential sequel for this film. And that's where we're at our franchise portion here. So the movie was not a success theatrically. It did pretty well worldwide. As we said, we got to that 370 million worldwide total against its 178 million budget. Usually the rule of thumb is that you want to get 3 times your budget. It didn't quite do that, but it was buffeted by good reviews, and people bought the movie when it came out, so digitally and Blu-ray. So
I'm going to interrupt you here real quick.
Yep.
WB spent $100 million advertising Edge of Tomorrow.
Yeah, that's crazy.
$100 million.
You could buy half a Jack the Giant Slayer for that.
You cannot keep being your reference frame.
Nearly 3 Jurassic Parks. It's crazy.
Yep. So Tom Cruise had an idea for a sequel, and that concept was apparently just ready to go. He was going to work with Doug Liman to do develop the sequel to this film. Apparently, it was supposed to be way better than this movie. The concept that they had working for this thing, they're
we're gonna make a sequel. It's gonna be better.
Yeah. Well, that was just the quote.
This time we're gonna make a good movie. We're gonna actually try.
You think this was a good movie? Just you wait.
The wording was weird, but they were just really happy with this script. That said, it's been kind of
script. That's a
Yeah.
If they finished it, they were already.
There was a spec script that was developed for this, so it does. I do think it has that developed at least. But over time, and especially because of the pandemic and all of that, all of this has been. It was such a hard sell from the outgo. Like, Tom Cruise can make anything happen, but this was like, it's literally an on the fence type of thing where it's like, okay, the first movie was barely successful. Yes, we kind of consider this successful. They developed this idea. Doug Liman was on board. Pandemic happened, and then now it's been just this shuffle game of trying to get everyone on board to do it. Like, oh, Tom Cruise is not available. Oh, Emily Blunt's not available at this time. Doug Liman's not available at this time. Just scheduling conflicts all around, and it's not completely shut down. There's still a potential for a sequel. That said, if I'm a betting man, this is not going to happen. Like, I don't think we're going to see a sequel to this movie.
I'd say we'll see a Days of Thunder 2 before we see an Edge of Tomorrow.
Hey, they've done Top Gun 2. That is
feasible.
That
was my thinking.
That is genuinely feasible.
Just call it Top Gun. Sorry, just call it Days of Thunder Trickle.
Yeah, and honestly, after Top Gun Maverick, I could see them going for a Days of Thunder sequel before this. Just like
absolutely
back Nicole
Kidman. Oh heavens, no! She says I'm not working.
That would be awkward.
To get the leading lady back. You just get a very attractive adult actress.
A different lady.
Adult actress, sorry, middle-aged lady. Who,
wrong genre.
Is wonderful. So I'm so sorry.
I do feel like blaming the pandemic is a bit of a cop-out, though, because it's like, well, we wanted to make a sequel, but 6 years later, everyone had COVID.
Yeah, like, what's the interest going to be in this? Like, I think you had to strike while the iron was slightly hot, and now it's just gone completely cold. That said, who knows if, like, Tom Cruise's star power wattage has gone up after Top Gun, and maybe that could...
revive it,
juice it. Yeah. But I don't know.
I would love to think that the fact that it kind of opened poorly, but then word of mouth built it up.
Yeah.
What that was the people who went to see it in the opening week leaned into the concept and went back to see it over and over and over again.
Oh yeah, maybe
they died and repeated themselves.
Exactly.
They kept repeating the viewing. Yeah. So. Again, I don't think this movie's getting a sequel, especially if the title that was revealed for the sequel is to be believed, which it was going to be titled Live, Die, Repeat, and Repeat.
No!
I'm not joking. That's
lazy.
Why?
And rewarm, wash, rinse, repeat.
Yeah, exactly.
Leftovers.
If they had the stones to then show you the original film again... it's a time loop.
Different ending, guys. Make it to the end.
I would love that. That'd be the ultimate troll, and I feel like that
would it inside of Inception.
Oh my gosh!
Who knows? That could trigger like a social media movement.
Oh yeah.
Everyone, all right, watch this movie again. All right. Yep, that closes out our discussion on Edge of Tomorrow, a semi-successful movie. that will likely not be getting a sequel, but if it does, we'll give its redemption and we'll cover it on the show.
Today's trend, all those time loops would have just spawned off multiverses.
Yeah.
We'd have to explore all those.
Yeah, there's a multiverse where this has like 7 sequels. With that said, Alex and Sharon Shaw, thank you so much for being a part of this podcast.
Thank you.
This episode was amazing. Really appreciate your insight.
We've been listening to you guys for a long time, so the fact that you were even wanting to be on our show is an honor.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Awesome. And
you can find them on any podcast platform, I presume, as well.
Yes.
Definitely iTunes. We keep getting emails where they're like, hey, you should join our podcast platform you've never heard of. But just look wherever podcasts are, and if you can find us, then great. The School of Movies, there's also a separate feed called the School of Movies Archive, which is everything we did before 2017. And then there's the School of Everything Else Archive, which is everything we did which isn't movies before 2017. There's like nearly 1,000 shows.
A lot of content.
We've become experts.
What was your previous show? Digital.
It went Digital Cowboys, that was on video games. Then Digital Gonzo, that was my solo show on movies. Then Digital Drift, when Sharon joined as a co-host.
Drift, yes.
And then it was like, unlike Edge of Tomorrow, this doesn't tell people what we are as a show. So we just changed it to School of Movies as a kind of it's a place where you go to think about movies and to sort of to study up as much as you can.
Yeah, gotcha.
But hopefully with the fun kind of school. I think we swear a lot more than we ever
There's a reason I keep listening to you, Alex.
All right, awesome. And closing out, David, we've got a new mini-series coming up. What are we starting with next week?
Are we announcing the full series, or are we just giving a teaser?
Just a teaser. Announce the first movie, and that will kind of give insight into what this mini-series is going to be covering.
All right. Well, I think AJ alluded to it earlier, but our first movie is going to be Hancock.
Yep.
Yay!
Take that for what
ahead
you
of the
will.
game.
Oh, somebody came back in time.
And yeah, that will be the first film in our superheroes in real life miniseries.
Is that what you're calling it now?
We're going to be calling it something close to that. It's a working title there. But yeah, Hancock next week. Thank you guys. Goodbye. Bye.
The longer I talk, the more rational it gets.